Call to order this meeting of the Coweta County Board of Education, Agenda 784. It is Tuesday, February 14th, 2023. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by a moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. Happy Black History Month, everyone. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. There are no recognitions. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of January 10th, 2023?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Action items, Group 1, Dr. Horton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The first action item I have for you in Group 1 is to approve the 2023 Sick Leave Bank Committee. As required by board policy, the board annually approves a list of nominees to serve on the Sick Leave Bank Committee. The following is a list of nominees: Mike Harris from WERS Central Office, Sean Dye, Jefferson Parkway Elementary, Tony Vinson, Welch Elementary, Adrian Cosen, Evans Middle School, Susie Bott, WERS Operations Center, Charlotte Hollins, East Coweta Middle School, and Allison Hurston from Noonan High School. Mr. Chair, I recommend approval.
You've heard the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the 2023 Sick Leave Bank Committee. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0.
The next action item I have for you in Group 1 is to approve a school nutrition surplus list. School Board Policy DO requires board approval for the public sale of school property. Further requires that any public sale amounting to more than $500 be advertised and sold to the highest bidder. We have 35 school nutrition items prepared for sale. The list of items is attached. Once these items are declared surplus property, the sale will be conducted. It is recommended that you declare these items as surplus property. I recommend approval.
You've heard the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the school nutrition surplus list. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0.
The next action item I have for you in Group 1 is to approve the FY 2024 RESA membership agreement. The Coweta County School System partners with West Georgia RESA for educational services for improvement of instruction. This contract is for FY 2024 agreement between West Georgia RESA and the Coweta County School System for the amount of $82,200. I recommend approval.
You've heard the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the FY 2024 RESA membership agreement. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. And Dr. Horton, just a quick question. I just noticed this on the document. It says 81,200, but then on the overview it says 82,200. Just clarifying.
Let me pull it real quick and make sure. Good catch. If I missed that. Hang on. Want to make sure I'm clear. Hang on. It's 81.2. Even the superintendent makes mistakes.
And that's okay.
So I recommend approval for the West Georgia RESA agreement in the amount of $81,200.
Okay. You've heard the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the FY 2024 RESA membership agreement for $81,200. Is there a motion to approve? Well, no, but it was for $82,200.
Okay, so a new motion. Okay, so moved.
And I'll second again.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0.
Next action item I have for you in Group 1 is to approve a contingency change request to replace floor covering in Building 700 at Noonan High School. Approval is requested for a contingency change request to replace the floor covering in Building 700 at Noonan High. Replacement of the floor covering was not included in the base bid scope of work for renovations in Building 700. Cost to replace the existing floor covering with LVT is $95,137. The change order proposal and supporting documentation is attached. Board members, I will mention to you that this is one of the buildings that we needed to quickly get ready so that we could occupy Noonan High at the start of the 2021-2022 school year. After we got into the construction phase, we realized that it's been 15 years since floor covering has been changed there, and this summer with the construction schedule would be the best opportunity for us to try to do that. So with that, I recommend approval.
You've heard the recommendation of the superintendent to approve a contingency change request to replace floor covering in Building 700 at Noonan High School. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0.
Mr. Chair, I'll turn it to you for the last action item in Group 1.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Horton. So the board requests approval of a resolution regarding proposed compensation for Board of Education members. If approved, this resolution will be forwarded to the local delegation for consideration, and I'll read the resolution. A resolution to establish compensation for the members of the Board of Education of the Coweta County School System, whereas the members of the Coweta County Board of Education currently serve without compensation, and whereas the Coweta County School System has performed a study of the compensation of all of the boards of education of public school districts in the state of Georgia, and whereas, according to the Georgia School Boards Association, out of the 181 public school districts in the state of Georgia, only 7 boards of education serve without compensation, and whereas the Coweta County Board of Education is the only county board of education in the state of Georgia whose members serve without compensation, and whereas the Coweta County Board of Education is responsible for a budget of over $240 million and approximately 3,000 employees, and whereas the Coweta County Board of Education believes that providing compensation to its Board of Education members to fairly compensate the time, commitment, and significant level of responsibility which a Board of Education member bears is appropriate, and whereas the Coweta County Board of Education members are nonpartisan, and whereas the Coweta County Board of Education is charged with the task of providing an exceptional educational experience to all students without regard to political agendas and political party lines, and whereas members of boards of education are expected to attend numerous Board of Education meetings, as well as various forums, presentations, state-mandated training and orientation sessions, legal workshops, school functions, community activities, and numerous other ceremonial events and school system functions, and whereas the Coweta County Board of Education wishes to establish an amount that members of the board may be compensated, now, therefore, be it resolved that the Coweta County Board of Education requests legislation from the Georgia General Assembly establishing compensation for its board members as follows. 1, each member of the Board of Education will be compensated at a rate of $11,400 per year to be paid monthly in the amount of $950 per month. 2, each member of the Board of Education shall also be entitled to reimbursement for expenditures incurred while on school system business at the latest rate provided within the statewide travel regulations issued by the State Accounting Office of the State of Georgia. Is there a motion to approve this resolution as I read it today on proposed member compensation?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would like to say a few words if I could, and I'd appreciate you giving me the opportunity just to state my opinion on the subject. From the time that the city and county school systems merged in 1970, service on the board has been non-compensatory. It's a model that's been in effect for over a half of a century, and it's served the citizens of Coweta County well. The role of the board has been historically viewed as an act of service, and its offices have been held by people whose focus has been the betterment of the school system. Board members have not been motivated by financial gain. They have had no other reason to serve than that they care about the best interest of students. The position was also established as nonpartisan in an effort to keep it from being considered a political office. We've never been at a loss for quality candidates on the board, and we currently have, as well as have had in the past, boards who are dedicated to the improvement of schools. My concern is that this motivation, the motivation could change if a dollar amount is attached to the position. What's more, we all willingly entered into this position with the full knowledge that it was an unpaid position. Personally speaking, I consider it a point of pride that we are among the small minority of school systems that are not compensated. It sets us apart from the majority of districts in the state. Also, it's a model that's been supported by the members of our community, and it's been successful. This community is a great place to live, not in small part because of the spirit of service and volunteerism that exist here. In fact, I believe the model we operate under allows us to maintain a sense of community versus some of the larger school districts in the state, and it keeps service from becoming a job. Given the fact that there is no established pay scale across the state for compensation, it's clear that whether to compensate or not, and if so much, is at each system's discretion. There's no one-size-fits-all amount, nor is there a formula to determine an appropriate amount. Compensation of the amount that is proposed here sends the message that it's about the board instead of the students. Each board since 1970 has had its own unique challenges. However, each board has understood the value of service to the students and families of this community and the fact that you can't put a price tag on it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Ms. Barnett. Is there any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries 6-1. There are no action items in Group 2. Group 3, Dr. Horton.
Call on Assistant Superintendent Dr. Mark Guy to bring you trips. Dr. Guy.
Thank you, Dr. Horton. The principal of Northgate High School requests permission for the Winter Guard to travel to Chattanooga, Tennessee for the Circuit Championship at the University of Tennessee on April 1st through April 1st, 2023. There'll be no school days missed, and there's no cost to the school system, and it does meet our guidelines for overnight out-of-state trips.
Mr. Chair, I recommend approval.
You've heard the recommendation of the superintendent to approve the Northgate High School field trip request. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0. Superintendent reports, Dr. Horton.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll call on Assistant Superintendent, Mr. Keith Chapman, to bring you budget report and sales tax. Mr. Chapman?
Slightly this month in cumulative, when you look at our allocated amounts, however, we've completed 58.33% of the year and only expended 57.17%, so actually a little over 1% under the amount of the year expended. Sales tax, $3.72 million, our largest collection to date. It happens to be Christmas time that we're collecting now. As we head into our budget season, one item that's come to us from the state is an increase in the health insurance rates that the system must pay. The proposed change has the rate going from $945 per employee per month to $1,580 a month, about a 60% increase. The certified employees, our teachers, admin, those type positions, most of those should be funded with state funding. However, any of our classified employees, we've got approximately 875 of those would not be covered by the funding. We would be looking at an increase of about $3.4 million to our budget just for the health insurance increase. I mean, we have it factored in, but That's something that popped up in January that no one had heard anything about.
And board members, just so you know, we're of course beginning the budget planning process now. We are tracking what the legislature does as far as budget goes. We have a plan for any contingencies that may arise. Just want to make you aware that in addition to tracking the budget to the level that we do monthly, we also begin well before things are even done at the state level, trying to see how those are going to impact us so that we can continue to provide the level of service that we're expected to provide. So we'll bring you more on that as we get deeper into the budget process, but that is significant. It is something that's significant that we're going to have to deal with moving forward. Thanks, Mr. Chapman.
Chairman, if I may, Mr. Chapman, could you repeat those numbers again? I'm not sure I heard 900 something and then 1,500
Went from
something.
945 to 1,580. Per month.
Unfortunately, I heard correctly. Okay.
Call on Dr. Mark Guy once again to bring you staff and student attendance. Dr. Guy.
Thank you, Dr. Horton. The highest staff attendance for the 5th attendance reporting period. Highest staff attendance, Eastside Elementary School. Highest student attendance in the program area, Central Educational Center. Highest student attendance for elementary, Arbor Springs Elementary School. Highest student attendance in middle school goes to Blake Bass Middle School. And the highest student attendance in the high school area, Noonan High School, home of the Cougars.
Thank you, Dr. Guy. Board members, at this time, I'm going to call on School System Director of Public Policy and CEO of the Central Educational Center, Mr. Mark Whitlock. He's going to bring you your board goal report tonight, and as part of that report, he's going to provide you information on the recent recertification visit that the Central Educational Center had. Mr. Whitlock.
Thank you, Dr. Horton. First of all, thank you, board members, for your support of Central Educational Center. On February 2nd, we concluded months of work with a positive recommendation from the visiting team that they will recommend that Central Educational Center be certified under the Dr. Joe Harless College and Career Academy certification process. That's important because that will, when approved by the State Board of the Technical College System, lead to a positive recommendation from them to the State Board of Education that our charter be renewed. And that's significant because that allows us flexibility to do what you and other members of the community designed for CEC to do, which is to ensure competitive talent for current and future careers by focusing on getting students by the age of 18 to much higher levels of technical skill and proficiency. Again, thank you for your support.
I guess this is the point in the program where I've been in groups where this report has been presented. And the first thing I always say is credit goes to you and your fabulous team for all of the wonderful things that are going on over at CEC. And he never wants to take credit for it, but he's standing at the podium, and I'm going to say it again publicly. So thank you very much for what you do. Board members, I will tell you that in pretty much every conversation that Mr. Whitlock and I have regarding CEC, we always end with the question, what's next? A big part of our responsibility and a big part of the expectation from our local community and business and industry is continually working to identify what's next so that we can stay competitive and so that we can turn out students who are ready for work, that have the skills necessary for work. And Mark, you guys do a wonderful job over there. This visit validates everything that we already knew. And board members, I will share with you, as I've shared with you before, what we have here, it doesn't come easy and it doesn't happen everywhere. And we heard that on this visit, didn't we, Mark?
We did. This is a unique community community that years ago decided that we were going to take head on the question of what do we do about creating our own talent. That's the question that will separate great communities from others. Are you creating the talent that you need for the great careers and great opportunities that can exist in a local community? That's separating this community already, and that's to the credit of a great team at CEC, our CEC board that's representative of the community, this board, West Georgia Tech's board, Chamber, Development Authority, so many others who make up that larger team that makes this work go.
Thank you.
Dr. Horton, if I could second what you said about thanking Mr. Whitlock. A few weeks ago, myself and Ms. Barnett had the privilege of sitting on the interview board where we were joined by some community industry leaders, development authority presidents, some other people in the community, and we were interviewed by a panel of basically Dr. Whitlock's coworkers or cohorts across the state that were CEOs and presidents and leaders of their own college and career academies. And they did ask us some questions, but what struck me the most in that is how impressed they were with our CEC and the things that are going on there. And it was nearly more of they were in awe of what we were doing because all of them had copied what was started here. So, and they were some CEOs that had been in positions for several years, and I think one college and career academy who was yet to open. It was very impressive, and again, thank you for everything that you've done, and the staff there. I know it was a lot of work getting ready for that, but it was a great job.
Thank you, Mr. Glover. Just to put a number on that, since CEC opened, since this community decided to lead the way, the state has spent approximately $160 million trying to replicate this more than 55 times across Georgia. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Next item I have for you, is the facilities and construction report. Northgate High School, the renovation, modification, and addition, that is still on there. We're just closing out those projects. And board members, I've waited to do this, and Mr. Cheek, don't get mad at me, but I do want to make sure to point out to you that the renovations and modifications came in right at $1 million under budget. And the Northgate High School addition came in right at $1 million under budget. And I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. Represents great work by Mr. Cheek and his folks, architects, engineers, the construction manager, also by our finance department when we put a budget together, making sure that we put a good budget together. And of course, it doesn't always work that way, but anytime we do fall under, I want to try to mention it to you. Smoky Road Middle School, you can see that the project is complete on that fire alarm, CEC gym fire alarm replacement as well. Just awaiting some finish from the architect on closeout documents. Still working on fire alarm at Winston Dowdale and Madras Middle School. Rough ends are done now at Madras, and they're underway at Winston Dowdale. Surveillance cameras, that's been on for a few months now. That project is complete, and we have paid for that work. Noonan High School, still the big one, which will be going on for a while. You can see there BP1, majority of the work is complete there. We're well into BP2 and 3. The gym, if you've been by there, I didn't get by there today because I was in Macon for some training. I believe we're at the point where the east wall probably has been closed in there, and we're getting close to being dried in on the gym project. And I see Corey and the guys back there. Dried in is a good thing at this point. We've had enough rain. We need to get dried in. So we're making progress on the gym. As far as the academic buildings over there, the grading is going as rain allows. Of course, movement of dirt to that eastern flank behind the Armory, off Armory Road. That has really been slowed up. I think just by my count, we've had almost 30 rain days So just a lot of rain, and we're getting done what we can despite the rain over there. A new item for you on your facility and construction report that I'll just briefly mention. It's a SPLOST 6 project, but it's the East Coweta softball locker room or field house. We're looking as a SPLOST 6 project to do the addition of a locker room with restrooms and a new concession facility at the softball facility there, and that design work is currently underway. Any questions on the facility and construction report? If not, I'll move right along and invite Mr. James Wilson from Ed Planners to the podium. Board members, you may recall, I think about 4 years ago, we had an outside demographic and enrollment study completed to double check our work and to try to take a look out over the better part of the next 5 to 10 years. We're about 4 years out from that, and coming out of the pandemic, I felt like this fall was a good time for us to take another look, just to have the work that we do internally kind of double-checked, so to speak. So we entered into an agreement with Ed Planners. It's Mr. James Wilson. He's a former school superintendent, and now he is in the consulting world and the enrollment study world and the projections world. So welcome, Mr. Wilson. We look forward to your report.
Superintendent Horton, Chairman Copeland, fellow board members, it is a pleasure to be with you. I was a part of that 4 years ago with a partner that I had at the time, and we enjoyed working for you then, and we certainly have enjoyed working for you now. So we have a relatively large presentation that we're only going to do a portion of it tonight, and you'll have another opportunity later where the superintendent will go over everything in detail. So as we do our homework and we study, we look for resources, we look for indicators, and we look for a lot of documents that will help us learn enough to be able to give you a good projection 5 and 10 years out. And so you'll see on this slide that we use multiple sources. The Atlanta Regional Commission, you're a part of their 20 county district, and we get great information from the ARC. We go to your county and your city governments to learn more about them and how they are planning their future here in this county. We obviously go to the Georgia Department of Education. We look at your October FTE counts and look in your history there and then forecast out further. The Governor's Office of Planning and Budget is a reliable source that we use. When we look for live births, we use the Georgia Department of Public Health. We use the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development to get our permits, our building permits, and then of course we use the Census Bureau. So we do as much as we can to learn as much as we can with the reliable sources that we have. On the next slide, as I said, we do a historical look at your enrollment and then to see where you're going. So that's what this is for the last 12 years. And you'll see, like every other school district, probably in the nation, but certainly in the state, in 2020 you had a downturn. And that was during the pandemic, and you're like everyone else. The good part for you is you have rebounded tremendously. And some districts are still slow in getting their rebound completed, but you can see the highest enrollment that you've had in the last 12 years was this 2022 enrollment October FTE count. So that's very good for you as a district because, like I said, and I won't mention any of the districts, but several of them are really struggling getting their students back. So, and everyone went through the pandemic, of course. And so the next slide shows you the elementary numbers. Same exact thing, just by elementary numbers. You took a downturn in 2020, and you have rebounded by 2022. Same thing for the next slide, which is middle school. Same exact thing. You've rebounded quite nicely. And then the next slide is the high school numbers. And you will see that your high school student population has grown significantly over the last several years, which is a strong sign because obviously, as Dr. Horton mentioned, I'm a former school superintendent, and we want to see students graduate. So if you've got a high positive look at your 9 through 12 students, that's really positive. And that's what this shows here. And you can see by the line that we put on there to show that is it a continual improvement. The next slide is a little bit difficult to understand, and I'm going to do my best at trying to articulate what it really says, but it's a good slide. And so if you'll look from the bottom left-hand corner, sum of grade kindergarten, 2010, and follow the yellow all the way to your current 12th grade, that's following those students from one year to the next. So if you see, there were 628 students in kindergarten in 2010. The next year, there were 1,649 students in grade 1, and you can see that you have continually grown. Not dramatically, but a lot of these that we do, we see it differently. So this is all positive. Now, the green box represents, and you see a green box in each of the columns. That is the highest number for that particular year. That too is a good indicator because you will see as you move closer to the 10th, 11th, and 12th grades, those are high numbers and those are positive numbers. So this is a way of looking at seeing, are your numbers strong? Are you growing by students staying in school? And so you plan for that as you look, and Dr. Horton was telling you right before me about some of your construction projects. Those are an opportunity for you to make sure you have proper housing for students. So this is a real good slide. It's just a little bit hard to decipher. The next slide, and like I said, in our research, we go everywhere. So this is an article from the Noonan Times-Herald, and it shows very quickly that Coweta reports major economic growth in 2020 despite the pandemic, which I think is the reason why you rebounded so quickly in your student enrollment. So residential building permits have bounced back, and you can see that the highest number for a calendar year of building permits in this county was in 2021. The only reason I don't have 2022 on there, I don't get those numbers until about 3 months after the calendar year is up. So I'm waiting to get those. My guess is, from just what we looked at, from what we could see, it's going to be very similar to 2021. So the indicators here in the next slide simply show when you look at in-migration or out-migration, you have a positive in-migration. And you can see in the middle of that slide, which is basically moved from 2010 to 2014, while we don't want to remember that was a big part of our recession. So a lot of things were in a downturn during that time. You don't see it in this slide in 08 and 09 as the recession started, but you'll see over those 4 years through that we really did see decline in a lot of areas, especially housing units, just because we were really going through a recession. The pie chart simply shows how many are residential occupied homes and how many renter occupied homes. And so you'll see those numbers. And then the box there simply says that you have 96% of your available homes occupied. So you still have room for growth with housing in your area, which is also a positive sign since there's a lot of potential and positive that's going on in your county. The next slide is the Noonan Times-Herald again, which talks about the census report. And so you'll see the box to the right. I show the governor's office projections. The governor's office of planning and budget will do a 50-year forecast. Now, I'm sure the governor's office is great, but I'm not sure he's going to be accurate because it's hard to project that far out. But it does help us for planning to see where you're going. So you can see the governor's office of planning and budget projects you to continue to grow all the way through 2050, almost 70,000 residents. We always look at the census data. The positive there, it's pretty accurate, but it's a 10-year accurate. So we look at the 2010, we look at the 2020. The ACS is a survey that helps us in between those times, but you'll also see that the ACS is recommending pretty closely in 2021 and 2050 with the Governor's Office of Planning and Budget. So we feel pretty good about that. We were checking the governor a little bit. The next slide is we get from the ARC, and we really rely on the Atlanta Regional Commission a lot. And like I said, your county is a part of the 20 metro area that they support. And you'll see they look at the population and that the population is expected to continue to grow. And there's certain areas that they believe will grow more than others. And that's just a good indicator, which is the main thing there. The next slide, I always put this in there because when you start forecasting enrollment, there are variables. And I've listed a few. House Bill 251, state law, the McKinney-Vento Act, promotion, retention, state law 20-2-282, the State Board of Education rule. There are reasons why students may be out of district or out of their home area, because that's allowed by policy and state law. Also, the housing market, as I've shown in some of these slides, can really dictate growth if there's not proper housing available to students. Even though you're 96% occupied, you still have that 4% that you have room for families to move into your communities. So the growth rate, migration, COVID played a big deal in the potential to grow during certain years. And obviously, while you have pre-K, there's no guarantee how much pre-K you will have, because students don't necessarily, or families don't necessarily have to send their kids to pre-K, but you offer it. So that's a positive in its own way. But it's hard for us to predict how many students would come to you in any pre-K year. The next slide is simply an advertisement where the governor in November of 2022 announced that you have development in your area that represents an investment of $2.5 million. That's Georgia's sustainable technology ecosystem, and will create multiple jobs for your community, which is a positive in Coweta County. The next slide is about birth rates. And you will see, so this is, if there is a negative, this may be it. Your birth rates have declined somewhat from one year to the next, and you'll see that there's some decline. So while you have real strong growth current and in the early future of your district, these birth rates are a little bit less, but you'll also see that in a lot of places, just simply families are planning differently today, especially through the recession and the COVID. Some families just held on for a while to make sure that everything was going to be okay. So that's really not a negative slide. It's just an indicator for us to take a look at. And the next slide, and I'm actually going to stop with this one. This is a part of a much larger presentation than, and like I said, when there's more time and when you're at retreats and your superintendent is going to go over these slides and all the ones after this in much greater detail. So what we did is that and the pie chart tells you elementary, middle, and high, and it's a little bit hard to read. But what it is we took the building permits and put them in the attendance zone. So I'll use the high school because it's the easiest to read of the three. Of the building permits for 2022, the attendance zones, so you can see the most building of the three high schools is East Coweta. Next is Noonan, and the last is Northgate with 14%. We broke that down for the elementary schools and the middle schools. The elementary schools you'll see as part of the pie. There will be a piece of the pie that doesn't have a number. It's just one, it was hard to put on there, and the number was very low. So this, like I said, this is a part of a much larger presentation that you'll get to be able to really get down into how many students per school for the next 10 years. So we've done all of that, but it'll be a good lesson that you learn through all of that. We appreciate the opportunity to be with you. We do a lot of these, and we do appreciate being called back 4 years later, and enjoy, as we always do, working with you. So this is kind of to get your interest in some of the research that we do to make sure that when we provide you information, it is researched and it is accurate.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Thank you for your work on this report. Board members, I will, if I may, I'll steal a little bit of his thunder. I'll go on and get to the end of it. We're not projected to grow a lot over the next few years. Approximately 500 students across the system is the projection over the next 5 years. So my plan will be, we'll take this information later this spring at our whole board training. We will take a deeper dive into this. We'll actually go through it by school location to show you use versus capacity and enrollment projections for all of our 31 schools. So we'll take a deeper dive there, and we'll also accompany that with some work at our whole board training on our strategic plan, because the strategic plan guides our work. This is a tool that we can use to help to provide us with some guardrails in what we do. But overall, a very good report. It shows us across the district, we have over a 90% utilization rate for our district facilities. So we're in a really good place where this board has done a good job, along with our human resources department, our facilities department, and our outside consultants have done a really good job at projecting and forecasting, building when we need to, adding on when we need to, but not making rash decisions. And I think that is what this work represents. It's a concerted effort by us to make sure that we're responsible with what we've been entrusted with, and that when we make generational decisions, which is what these are, we want to make sure that we're getting all the information so that we can make a very sound investment or decision. So more to come on this at our whole board training. And Mr. Wilson, once again, thanks for the work. No surprises in here, which is a good thing. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. And board members, that's all I have.
Thank you, Dr. Horton. So at 7:15, we're a few minutes early. We set 45 minutes aside for the purpose of public comments. This evening, we have 2 public comments. First, we'll have Alan Brady.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Happy Valentine's Day. As I told my wife, honey, there's nothing like a hot date at the school board meeting. As you may have figured out, I like to read. I always have one or more books that I'm reading at any one time, but it takes a long time to get through them, 10 minutes or so at a time. I did get through the entire Bible that way twice. My latest book is The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion by Professor Jonathan Haidt. I highly recommend it. I'm now on the last chapter. Professor Haidt is a self-proclaimed atheist who believes he has discovered the evolutionary basis for why people behave the way they do toward each other, especially as it pertains to politics and religion. He thinks he has discovered how our brains work and has come up with a list of critical ways that we make decisions and decide how to look at other people. He says that these processes are hardwired into us. We essentially make snap judgments and then use our rational minds to come up with reasons why we think the way we do. I think the good professor is onto something, but rather than just the result of random genetic variations and evolutionary selective pressures, there is instead a creator who hardwired these things into us. Man has a God-shaped void and will either fill it with the actual God or with something else he treats as God, whether he knows he's doing this or not. The reason I bring this up tonight is that this book has convinced me that I need to do a better job of trying to see things from other people's perspectives. Specifically, I've been racking my brain to try to figure out why the members of this board, and by extension the administrators at both the central and individual school level, would not recognize the problem with exposing children to explicit sexual content that most, if not all, are not mature enough to process without doing damage. Another speaker at a previous meeting put it this way: I thought that once you found out that this material was present, you would immediately do something about it. I was wrong. I don't know what's in each of your hearts. If you believe sexually explicit material is good for children, then I don't know what to say to you. I can only pray that you'll change your mind. It's those of you who are at least troubled by this, yet do not use your position of authority to do something about it, that I'm trying to figure out. What are you afraid of? Why would you think or say that you can't do anything about it when you clearly have legal authority to do so? Perhaps it's fear that the state or federal government will come down on you and take away funding in some way. I think you have little to fear from the state government. The state legislature in particular has shown a tendency to move toward more restrictive policies as it pertains to explicit materials. What about the federal government? Please correct me if I'm wrong, but according to the latest available data from the National Center for Education Statistics, the federal government provides 6% of the total revenue, or $643 per student per year in Coweta County. As well run as this system is financially, which it clearly is, if it were a business, I would want to buy stock in it. It operates at a profit. I think you could easily replace that. If the only leverage the federal government has is money, their share is small. So that leaves local. That is us, you and me, the people in this room and out there in the county paying our taxes. While a few of us have come and presented various defenses, a few have come and presented various defenses of exposing children to explicit material, mostly by accusation of book burning and worse. You've also heard ordinary citizens like me express our concern and make a simple request that 7 books be restricted to those 18 or older. Deep down, most of the citizens of Coweta would probably agree, but they too are afraid of saying so. They are afraid of being attacked by the busybody social mob. Why risk that? We have a serious shortage of courage these days. By the way, kudos to Ms. Barnett tonight in that department. Thank you. For my part, if I knew that our concerns about exposure to explicit material, as well as about indoctrination into divisive, anti-Christian, and anti-American theologies, for that's what they really are, religious cults, would be eliminated, I would gladly write you a check to cover the 6% federal share. It would be $120 or so increase to the $2,000 and change school portion of my property tax bill. In fact, I would probably be willing to pay a lot more than that. It would be easier than coming here and pleading for action. Please think about it, and if you're so inclined, pray about it, and find the courage to do what needs to be done. Thank you.
Jasmine Meehan.
Good evening. And yes, I wanted to second that. Thank you, Ms. Barnett. I find it funny that there was not, I guess, a big announcement. You guys would be voting yourselves a salary. I would think that would be something that others would have an input on, but I 100% agree with everything that you said, so thank you. I do want to share an update on one of the books that was originally presented to the board that has a novel and a graphic novel option that is in our high schools, The Handmaid's Tale. The graphic novel version was removed from Noonan High School, but the novel itself remained available. However, to students 18 years of age or older and younger with parental consent. That was a very fine decision made by the Noonan High Book Committee. The same novel was reviewed by the Northgate High School Book Committee, and they opted to keep it with no restrictions. This decision was appealed. If one high school can reasonably make a good decision for our children, why can't another? So in this case, for those that are not aware, there is a Coweta County School System for Appealed Decisions Committee. That's a mouthful. They did recently follow up on the appeal and came to the conclusion that the novel, The Handmaid's Tale, should be available for students at least 18 years old, and younger students would need parental consent. So thank you to Ms. Barker and others in this committee for your time in the review process and agreeing that this novel should be for adult users, or adult readers, excuse me. It's too bad there's not a rating system in place for our school district for these types of books where they could be listed and rated for parents to make a choice whether or not their children should read them. We rate movies, TV shows, Matter of fact, Handmaid's Tale is a TV series on Hulu. It's rated TVMA, which is the same as rated R. So I did notice recently, though, there on the Coweta County system website, there is now in the curriculum portion a list of books that wasn't there before. So it does show elementary, middle, and high, but for some reason the middle school book list was restricted. But the other two, I could just click and look through all the list of the books. I think the asterisks on the high school list that advise each particular book that would require parental consent was very impressive. It's nice to see that you're trying to do the right thing. Hope is not lost. There is always time to do the right thing. It is not always easy nor the most popular. But I do believe, Dr. Horton, that you do agree with the fact that our children should not be exposed to adult content. I cannot say that for the rest of the board, especially with the recent changes that were voted to the policy IFA-R, removing concerned citizens from objecting to these obscene materials in the hands of children. I do still find it hypocritical that you yourselves are all citizens of the county, and to the best of my knowledge, other than Dr. Horton, none of you have children in the system at this time. Yet you all make decisions for the parents that actually do. So I stand by what I have said months ago, and that's by the standards in which you updated the policy, none of you should be on that board. It should be a board of parents and grandparents and people who have a real investment on the welfare of the county's education system. I've been asked many times, why do I care so much about the school system? I have removed my children from the government schooling, yet I still show up here month after month. The short answer is that my children still must live in a society with the other children who all one day will be adults and possibly leaders in our community. It matters greatly. It is widely known, and also my belief, that there is an evil in this world that is successfully breaking apart families, confusing and degendering our children, causing division between races and creating hate. One way that this is accomplished is through literature. It is a tale of time. And with that, I just want to quote Albert Einstein. The world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything. Thank you.
Are there any board comments? Okay, hearing none. Is there a motion?
Chairman.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Thank you, if I may. Just want to say on this St. Valentine's Day, a day that many celebrate and remember the life and legacy of St. Valentine, and a day in which many people traditionally express love and affection toward others. I'd just like to say a special thank you to all of you board members for what you do for our Coweta County school system, for what you do, the love you show, the care and concern that you have for public education. I appreciate your work. I appreciate your devotion, your leadership, and your support, which keeps us committed to student success. Thank you all, and happy Valentine's Day.
Dr. Goss, so kind. So kind. Is there a motion to approve to enter into executive session to discuss personnel, real estate, and potential litigation?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carries 7-0.